Hey, it's Mudflaps back with another video. This time, Ulduar 25-man Keeper's Loot Guide. And before I get into it, I have been asked to shill myself at the beginning of the video. Like the video, please subscribe so I can dedicate more time to getting info out to you guys, and that would help me do that. I really appreciate it. And with that, I'll get back to the stuff here. So, one of the big comments that I keep getting is, why are loot prio guides, be they videos or documents, spreadsheets, whatever, why are they not in agreement on so many things? Sure, some of them all agree, but many things are apparently having a lot of discrepancies between them. And I think the reasoning for that is either the first thing, people could make a mistake, have an oversight, completely possible for anybody to do that. You're talking about hundreds of items and thousands upon thousands of different methods that you could pass everything out, right? Then the other thing to consider is there are two constantly conflicting methods of loot distribution. You have the efficiency argument for who's going to wear it the longest, who is going to get the most out of it to help your raid push a hard mode, or just keep doing better. And then there's also the who hasn't gotten any love in a while, right? Who has a great attitude and is pushing the envelope, but their class isn't really, their spec isn't really doing what we need it to do. Well, those don't always go together. So sometimes you have to break from one to make two happen. And sometimes they do that in a guide without explaining it. And that's where it's going to be very, it's going to have some conflict. So the best way to deal with that is in a video, explain why these other things are happening. The second issue that's has been brought to my attention is how many of the loot distribution guides assume you have access to every item in the game at all times. This list guide saying this is all you have, this is everything you have to get. Well, that's just not accurate, right? So when people are trying to find out where they get for loot at whatever road they're at, be it no hard modes, half the hard modes, what have you, if somebody says, well, there's no guide out there to help with that, go do your own research, then it's really not a guide at all, is it? If it only applies to 5% of the people, that's not really the best kind of guide. So what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to touch on some of the non-hard mode items and explain how useful they can be until hard mode items, and also kind of say, hey, if you're at this hard mode, you might want to consider this. And if you don't have access to this, you might want to consider this. Trying to fill in the gap, the information void between nothing and I have access to every hard mode, which, as we've seen, is very, very few guilds. It's as of last week, it was less than 2% of guilds. So with that, let's jump into it. So for Hodir, I'm not going to go over this or this, and I'm not going to go over like the pieces like plate holy pieces. Who else can use it but them, right? For the frozen loop, however, this is a great piece. This is a pre-hard mode bis for virtually every caster, okay? This is not something to scoff at. Now, its stats, if you're going for efficiency, this becomes a little difficult. So it's statted perfectly for Aflock, but you really can't just say Aflock every time for everything. If the mage is trying to go fire in your raid, or the mages, and it doesn't have crit, but it has hit, and they need extra hit, they need more hit than anyone else. Sometimes the Aflocks have too much hit in whatever gear set they have. Everything got bumped up in eye level, there's extra hit on everything, a lot of specs have too much. So this is going to be one of those player over class based on what situation they're in, who can utilize the hit in the current setup for your guild. And that is going to be the best way to do this for any of the casters. And it's not a throwaway piece. So if anyone's acting like, oh, whatever, blah, 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 this is actually a huge piece. So with that, Northern Barrier, great threat shield, BOE. Don't forget that it's BOE, don't D it. For the tier chest, and helm, at this point, everyone could have bought these 2 to 3 times over. So I'm not going to go into any detail for that. Everyone has complete access outside of the raid to this, and at this point, it would be improbable to not have it. So for the hard mode, if you're getting Hodir, which according to the Willy video, this is the 3rd hardest hard mode, or 3rd least killed. So this one could take a while, but with gear, it becomes more and more accessible. This is going to be one of the ones that gear helps a lot, but also RNG, unfortunately. Drape of Icy Intent, Assassination Rogue, and Enhanced Shaman before anyone else, and after that, you can figure it out with hit situations. See, Hunters, this is not their bis. They wouldn't mind it. If they can use the hit. A theme that goes forward in many of the videos that I have is that Hunters have too much hit on much of their stuff, so you just have to deal with that based on what their scenario is at the given moment. Gloves of the Frozen Glade. Now, if you're killing Hodir hard mode, you're probably killing Vezek's hard mode. Vezek's hard mode is significantly easier, and those gloves are better, and not that many people want the Vezek's gloves. That being said, you always prio this to a Boomkin before the other one if people need the Vezek's one, because it's the hand reps of the Vigilant. Because even though this is worse, it's barely worse. It's like a fraction of a % worse, and only the Boomkin can use it. So go with that. Bindings of Wintergale. So there's going to be a theme with bracers. Many of the bracers, the BIS hard mode bracers, are BIS for 2 phases. This being one of them. Holy Paladins, Resto Shamans, and Ellie Shamans. This is their BIS until ICC. Now, I would, if you're going for efficiency in the sense of not wasting loot, I would go for the Shamans first, and then Holy Paladins, but it depends on your guild. Who's getting a lot of love? In hard mode pieces, you want to spread those out as you can. Frigid Strength of Hodir. This is Frosty K Prio, in my opinion. And then after that, anyone that could use the upgrade. Constellus I talked about in the Algalon video, check it out. Staff of Endless Winter. So, usually, staves are so far behind the one-hand offhand combo that they're not worth going into crazy detail with. But in this tier, there's a couple that are. The 10-man hard mode one is very good, and this one is incredible. The BIS one-hand offhand Cosmos with Star Shard Edge, of course, is better. But that's way harder to get the combo up, and it's going to be crazy to try to get that to people because you only have so many. But this staff is actually insanely powerful. It's one of the times where it's actually not that far behind comparatively, and it's a huge piece. So I would go with Mage here if your guild is going Warlock with Star Shard Edge, and it's great for Mage. There's so much crit there. It's very helpful for them to go Fire. It's an excellent piece. I would go Mage first. For Thorim, BOE legs, these are okay. No drama here. Belt, you go to Hunter with this. Sif's Promise. This is a, if they need expertise ring, solid ring for any of the strength users. Scale of Fates. The efficiency argument would say Aflock. Aflock for the on use during their execute. Uncontested, best use for the trinket. However, one of the big things you're going to have to think about is, did everyone in your guild come into this phase with double epic trinket? Did they get all the stuff from the prior phase? Most guilds, as far as I've been told, didn't get that lucky with trinkets. So you're going to have a handful of casters coming in with a blue that didn't get love in the last phase. And if all your locks did, and a mage or boomkin or somebody else didn't, well, guess what? I think you should give it to them. You need to spread the love. It's not so great that you would be wasting it by giving it to one of the other casters. So this is one of the things where I think it's a perfect piece to share the love for people who are coming in with a blue piece. You know. Volmir. So this is a great frost weapon, and it's also a great prop pally weapon. Consider either. Again, tier helm, you can buy it. Embrace of the Gladiator, Assassination Rogue, then Combat and Feral, and then anyone after that. But Assassination Rogue should be Prio on this. It's perfectly standard for them. Yeah. Pauldrons of the Combatant. These are a weird piece because they're not bis for anyone as a hard mode item. The off piece for Shaman and Holy Paladin is chest, and multiple chest pieces that are just awesome. And that's going to be their off piece, unless you're getting crazy luck with other stuff and you have extra tier where you can swap things around and this is your piece for now. That might be the case because hard mode Thorum is basically the first hard mode most guilds get. So this loot table will be accessible to more guilds than any other hard mode. Warhelm of the Champion. I would give this to Ret Paladin first, and then Unholy Decay. Unholy Decay's second best option is actually incredibly strong and a BOE, and Ret Paladin's, they got the buff, right? Now they're pumping, kind of. So give them love here. I would suggest giving this to Ret, and then Fate's Clutch. Your tanks, nothing to say there. Skyforge Crossbow. This is one of those things where you could either do which hunter's getting lots of love already, give it to maybe one of the other hunters, or who was last on Envoy, right? Or who didn't get love with Envoy last phase. Well, this is a good chance to really pass around the love here. Wisdom's Hold. This is going to have to be player over class. Ellie, Resto, Shaman, and Holy Paladin. It's awesome for all three. The only thing I could say is whoever's getting Valinir shouldn't be getting this before the others. That's the only caveat I could give you. For Freya, the Boots of the Servant, wasted. You have crafted pieces that are better for everybody. That's Leggings of the Life Tender. Again, just nothing tier is better for Resto Druids. Gauntlets of the Ruthless Reprisal. Now this, Unholy Bis for the phase, not a throwaway item. Don't give it to anyone but them if they're in your raid, right? Don't mess around with that. Nymph Heart Charm, BOE, it's okay. It's, again, some of these pieces, there are 10-man hard mode, very accessible 10-man hard mode pieces that are better than some of these normal pieces. So that's going to be one of the big kind of like wrenches in the story for a lot of the items. Lifebinder is an okay staff. Now you have tier that you can't buy with badges. That being said, instead of going crazy detailed into this, many people have been passing out a lot of these so far. I would say follow the main path of, your tank already has these unless you've been crazy unlucky. And then you should consider the classes of Disc Priest, Enhanced Shaman, and Resto Shaman, because they use their tier for 2 phases. Okay? As far as I know, no one else does that. So consider them first, and then after that, who is it true bis for that won't replace it with hard modes? Consider them next, and then everyone else. That's how the tier of tier, right? And that's probably the best way that you can do this, unless you're trying to share love or set up set bonuses for people. That's also another way to do it. Drape of the Sullen Goddess. This is awesome for holy just priest healers, and I know holy is going to want the hard mode cloak turn in, but very, very difficult to get that piece to a healer. But for holy paladin, resto shaman, disc priest, this is crazy good. And I would do just player over class here. Leggings of the Enslaved Idol. This is kind of an interesting one. So, Boomkins could use this. Arcane Mage would really like this. Now, I keep talking about fire, but there's a good chunk of mages, if you're a mage and you're watching, that you're playing both specs constantly. You're going back and forth based on the fight, because it's actually pretty crazy, the difference. Some fights Arcane is just king by a mile, and some fights it's way, way worse than fire. So mages in most guilds are probably playing both based on the fight, or they're at a huge disadvantage, and setting the raid to a huge disadvantage. So this is kind of one of those combo pieces. In fire, this is not part of the BIS setup, but it's got perfect stats for them, and it lets them be in their BIS setup for Arcane. So this is a really good mage item, I think. Handguards of Revitalization, tank. Again, BIS neck for tank. Blade Twister, Assassination Rogue, then Combat Rogue, then you're sad after that when it drops anymore. Dreambinder, Feral, then Hunter. Remember, Feral triple dips from weapon attack power. A Hunter, it's just a stat stick. Never, ever give this to a Hunter over a Feral Druid. That is perfect grounds for a Feral to leave a guild, in my opinion. Mimiron. So, now we're at probably tied with Hodir for one of the least accessible hard modes in the raid. So when I get to the hard mode pieces, if it fits your guild, if you are already killing it, then awesome. If you're getting close, awesome. And for many people, eventually will be coming up to this, progging it with more and more gear, see how you do, and eventually have access to what I think is probably the best loot table of any of the hard modes outside of Algalon. So for his normal mode gear, you have a BOE Drape. It's decent for many casters. And again, you can buy this if you needed to. Not great. Really kind of a joke piece here, because both the badge item and the crafted item are better than this. So you're very sad if this drops. If somebody needs this, they have not... It must be an alt, or somebody who has put literally no time into their character. Again, it's cheap with badges at this point. People have nothing to spend their badges on. Everyone's just flooding the market with ruined orbs, right? Pandora's Plea. Holy Paladin, it's decent. Resto Shaman, it's decent. And Holy Priest, it's decent. I know you're going to have a lot of these class discords be like, oh no, it's trash, blah, 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 because we'll mega bis. Well, it's pretty good. It's decent. Like, it's not a trash piece. If you're coming in with really bad luck, it's pretty good. Now, I know Soul Preserver punches far, far above its weight, and that's something to consider, but, it's not a bad piece. Insanity's Grip. So pre-hard mode BIS for combat, and single target enhanced shaman. So the enhance players out there, some of them are saying spell enhance is the only way. Some of them are like it's dead. Well, neither of those is right. If you're playing it, then On multi-target, Spell Hance is king, and on single target, it's physical DPS weapons like this or the Flame Leviathan one, right? So they're going to want to get the melee ones and the caster ones. The caster ones are going to be a lot harder to get. This is going to be much more accessible for enhanced shamans because after combat, no one else wants it. There's no reason they can't have it. But Constellus and these other things, it's going to be very, very difficult to get unless you're in GDKP runs or something. So good luck with that, Spell Hance Shamans. Now for tier, same thing as the last boss. Use that tier of tier. And then for the hard mode pieces, if you're not killing this boss, Ariaya Tank Cloak is Biss. If you can kill this, this becomes the Biss. Crown of Luminescence, massive, massive piece actually, and very contested. You've got your priests, your Boomkin, your Demolock, Arcane Mage. I mean, like, there's so many people that could use it. It's kind of crazy, but Demolock first. Demolock, I love the way that Demolock is set up, just like Survival in the past. Every time they get an upgrade, everybody gets an upgrade. Prio them first, and make sure that they're going support pieces. They should not be getting tier and other things like that. That is for personal DPS at the expense of the raid if they're trying to make that part of their Biss setup. If you have access to lots of the hard mode pieces, a support demo is a support. That is their purpose. That is why they get so much loot. That is what they signed up for. And they should have full spirit pieces except for like one or two things that make sure that they have hit cap. So for this, I would consider, honestly, I would consider your Disc Priest highly. After that, after your Demolock, then your Disc Priest, and then after that, play your overclass who hasn't been getting love, spread out hard mode loot. Honestly, any of these things other than giving to your demo first are very malleable for your unique guild because I don't know what's dropping for you. What are you getting lucky or unlucky with? That's going to be different for everybody. Some people are just never seeing certain items, and you have to say, we have to break away from this guide and kind of fit things in a way that makes people feel like they're being rewarded for their time and effort. Armbands of Bedlam. So this is another bracer where it's Biss for multiple phases. This is Ret Pally, Unholy, and Frost. This is just crazy. You could consider Unholy first here, and it's statted perfectly for them, and that would be perfectly fine. If they're getting a crazy amount of loot, you could swap it up to other people. You could base it off who's gotten the most. For hard mode things, all three are going to use it until ICC. Now, Conductive Seal. Did you know that this is the most contested item in the raid? Every caster, every healer, and even some melee want this ring for Biss. And again, the theme, it's Biss until ICC. So, who do you give it to? Well, Demo first. Yes, they have other options that are very close, but if you are trying to get the most for your raid, Demo first, especially if it's dropping, you can't guarantee that the 10-man one's going to drop. You don't just base things around the idea that something will drop because that's not true, right? You have to play around what drops for your guild. So, after that, it's perfectly itemized for an AFLOC. If you're going for the efficiency and getting a ton out of your stuff, go for them. That's fine. But you can also do player over class, and you can also say who hasn't been getting love again. Delirium's Touch. If you're my guild, every week this drops, and every week you're very, very sad. And so if your combat rogue wants it, that's great. It's pretty good for combat. The 1.4 daggers are better from Ulduar, but this is great if you don't have those, and those haven't dropped either. So after they get it, then what? Well, you've got a shard. Unfortunate. And then for Star Shard Edge, we go over that in the Algalon video for Antechamber of Ulduar. And that is it for the Keepers of Ulduar. I hope that this was helpful. And if you have any questions, comments, or things you thought I missed, or you want to go more in depth with some of the things I talked about, feel free to comment in the comment section, like and subscribe, and I shall see you on the next one.